And she's sitting there. It's pitch dark, probably in November sometime maybe, and said she sensed something. And I guess she could smell something, really smell bad. She couldn't figure what the heck it was. She looks up, and here's this thing hovering above her. There's a truck, 16-wheel truck coming towards her. And he's not going very fast, apparently. It's 4 o'clock in the morning, and all of a sudden, there's something in front of her. I don't know if she had time to even hit the brakes, but she, boom, hits this thing, bumps her head, dents the fender, knocks it sliding over in the grass in the ditch, about, I think, 30 feet away from what she said. He gets out of the car, kind of stunned, I suppose, at first. The trucker gets out. He says, ma'am, get back in your car. Those things aren't human. Get back in your car.
Welcome back to Blurry Creatures. This week we have a special one for you. We're going to release an episode that was a members-only episode to everyone that we did a couple months back with Joe Taylor. Luke and I didn't know that Joe Taylor was sick, and he passed away last week, and just very sad. I feel like the space has lost a lot of great ones lately, and Joe was generous. He came on our show a bunch of times and told some great stories. He worked at the Blanco Fossil Museum, ran it. And most of you guys share a meme of a guy with a big old scraggly white beard standing next to a giant skeleton bone on the thigh. Well, that's Joe Taylor, and that gets shared around a lot in these spaces. So this one's for you, Joe. Sad to lose such a great one in this space. I know he was friends with a lot of the people who come on our show, a lot of the guests. So we just wanted to release this one to everyone. But if you want to support the show, get access to episodes like this, you can go to blurrycreatures.com/members. And we just released one on the UFO highway, the invisible UFO highway. And a lot of people are really loving that and doing that at home and doing the experiment that we talked about on that episode. So this one's for you, Joe. And sorry for those who were connected to him, who lost a friend.
The history of our Earth is so different from what we can imagine.
The Smithsonian, that if they found out about a large skeleton somewhere, was to go get it.
I'm going to assume at least one person is right, because if one person's right, it busts the paradigm.
It all goes back to the fallen cherub. And the problem with the modern day church, they have a very truncated view of the supernatural.
This backdrop that's just pregnant with all kinds of meaning associated with this Mount Hermon event.
Welcome to Blurry Creatures.
And this guy defects from the kingdom. That's a big deal.
Welcome back to Blurry Creatures. Joe Taylor, the paleontologist from the Blanco Fossil Museum. Happy to have you back on the show today. Joe, you're an artist, a Renaissance man, and somebody that everyone should get to know and hang out with. Appreciate you coming on Blurry Creatures. And Joe, you're a man of many rabbit holes. We could go down so many rabbit holes with you.
You could indeed.
From giant fossils to Mothman to Bigfoot to all kinds of weird alternate history. I wish we had enough time to talk about all the weird stuff. But thanks for coming back on Blurry Creatures again, Joe Taylor. Those of you listening from the Blanco Creation Museum, thanks for coming back on Blurry Creatures.
You're welcome. We actually call it Blanco Fossil Museum, and we say Blanco instead of Blanco. Yeah, Blanco. We can't say Spanish around here.
Blanco.
Blanco. It's got an A in there. I mean, just blank.
Yeah, exactly.
We grew up in California. We were forced to take Spanish, remember?
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Well, I got a guy that works for me. We speak Spanish back and forth to each other. We say Blanco.
I love it. I love it. Well, Joe, I was seeing you were posting some stuff on Facebook about doing a presentation about Mothman. That's one of the more elusive cryptids, and I thought it would be cool that you're actually doing an event about it. So I thought we could talk about it here on the podcast because it's so mysterious, the Mothman.
It isn't. I think we've become sort of the Mothman capital of the world here of the last few years, and now Dog Man's running through town, I guess. And, I've got a buddy here tonight, Max McNabb. His dad knew one of the guys in the original, was it a little town over there? Sundown, Texas, Mothman encounter back in the 70s.
It was more of an Owlman.
Owlman, Mothman. You know, that's one of the things about the Mothman. I'm not sure anybody knows really what his face looks like. I've got a really old wood cut, and it shows a guy with wings, a man with wings, and an owl's head riding a big wolf. What is that? Is that Owlman, Mothman?
Oh, riding a big wolf. That sounds like a tie-dye shirt that you might buy like at a craft fair. I kind of want one. That's wild.
Yeah, those listening. Yeah. Joe's also a great artist. Man of many talents.
I'm now in the dress designing business, fellas. I talked to a fabricator, a lady that makes dresses. I said, how much material does it take to make a dress? Oh, about 7 yards. I go, wow, at $1,000 a yard, the stuff I'm going to use is going to cost somebody a fortune.
Yeah, there you go.
So that's a whole other story.
Hey, work smarter, not harder, right?
We're just selling Bigfoot gear for now. That's all we get into. But those listening, Joe, you're like a real artist. You're one of the true artists of the day. Everything from designing fonts to basically molding casts of dinosaur bones to you were painting murals. We had a long conversation the first time, and you have a cool history and a cool story. You have a lot to talk about. I love it. Isn't West Virginia, though? We're talking Mothman tonight. Wasn't West Virginia the Mothman capital of the world, I thought? Point Pleasant?
Well, that's where the first really major encounter was that I know of, unless there was something before that. But yeah, they're famous for that. They made it's part of the town's draw. Now I guess they have stores there and sculptures and all kinds of stuff, and it's probably a big deal for them. But we've had at least 5 people encounter that thing here in Crosbyton. One lady's encountered it twice and hit the thing twice.
Like with a car, or with a?
Whether it's the same one, yeah, with a car.
And those listening, you have this museum. You have people coming in all the time, and they're telling you their stories, right? Or
well, I don't know why it is. Maybe it's Texas personality or whatever. But people say a little something, and I don't shy away and go, "Oh, that's ridiculous." I just don't do that. And before long, they're telling you about, "Oh yeah, I saw a Black Panther down south of here, man." Well, he wouldn't tell anybody, you know. And the stuff with the chupacabra, the Mothman, Bigfoot, all that stuff, they just don't talk about it, but they do to me for some reason, because I listen and I take it, at face value. So these little ladies, they just opened up and told me all this stuff, and I have no reason to doubt their story. They had nothing to gain from telling it. In fact, most of them hadn't really told anybody before. So, y'all run into this all the time. If you got to talk about Bigfoot or any other elusive creatures, all the blurry creatures out there, a lot of people discount it because they don't want to talk about it because they don't want to think. But, anybody can discount something. Anybody can be a disbeliever. But, that's really just kind of oftentimes lazy. But when you have when you have 20, 30,000, maybe 40,000 people who've had a similar occurrence with Bigfoot, and now how many, maybe a dozen that I'm aware of, at least, encounters with Mothman, Owlman, whatever it is, you got to say, okay, there aren't that many creative people out there making up stories that drive tractors and work in a gym. These are just ordinary people. They don't make stuff like that up. The Northwest Passage would never have been found if everybody said, "Oh, that can't be. We're not going to listen to that old Indian guy or some trapper." They paid, the government said, "Well, yeah, let's check these guys out. It sounds like what they're saying is true. We've heard this 3 times now." So, that's how things get done. People follow up on things. That's what you guys do. That's what I do. I follow up on stuff. And, I don't believe everything I hear, but I will check out everything I hear. And a lot of people just discount it, thinking they're so smart, that I don't believe that stuff. No, you're just really lazy. That's what it is, and narrow-minded.
Yeah. So, are people telling you more? Is he getting weirder at the museum? Like, are people telling you more stories, or is it just like the same old, just like as you're going about your day?
No, there's more stories. Of course, we've been shut down for 2 years. COVID shut us down, and then last year at this time, we got hit with a bad storm, ripped up the roof on both sides of the museum, flooded the museum. All the carpets had to be taken out. The flooring had to be taken out. It was a bad deal. So we just now opened up about a month and a half ago to the public. We're not officially open until Labor Day here in a couple of weeks, 2022, but we'll be officially open then. But so there haven't been many people in because of COVID, but we're going to have the Bigfoot lady, Harriet McFeely from the Bigfoot Crossroads Museum up in Nebraska. Yeah, you ought to have her on your show sometime. And she'll be here to drink coffee and have pastries and just talk to people. But man, she's been getting into stuff up there, and she's just a lady that kind of got into this. But so I've been working with her quite a bit, and I'm going to take her glory or anything. But man, she is onto some stuff up there.
Man, coffee, pastries, and Bigfoot. That sounds like a plan. That's like a Blurry Creatures pipe dream right there, Nate.
Yeah, Bigfoot donuts.
Right there?
Yeah, we like that, Joe.
The next town over here is Rawls, my birthplace, actually. Don't tell anybody, but...
Okay, no one knows.
Anyway, there's this Russian guy has moved in there, and he's opened up his pastry shop, and he has other clients in Lubbock. But it's the best stuff you have ever had. So I'm going to carry that in the museum and have that there for the grand opening. And you can't resist good coffee, good pastries, and weird Bigfoot Mothman stories. They have to talk all night.
Joe, it says this is unofficial sponsorship here. It's like they're the best donuts you ever had. By the way, we're featuring them at the museum, so come on down.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it.
Yeah, and now the podcast is getting bigger. There's probably a lot of all of our Texas listeners out there. It's a big state. We love you, Texas. You guys have a lot of weird cryptid activities. So, Joe, tell us how you collected enough Mothman data to actually want to do a presentation about it.
I'm trying to think now how it got started. This guy was doing some work for me, and his wife was over. We got to talking, and I don't know, we're just sitting around drinking coffee, I guess, at the museum. And she started telling me this story. They used to live a block away and a few blocks down on the highway that goes right by the museum here. Said she'd gone out at, I think, 10 or 11 o'clock at night to have a last cigarette. Just sat out there, just did it all the time. And she's sitting there, it's pitch dark, probably in November sometime maybe, and said she sensed something. And I guess she could smell something, really smell bad. She couldn't figure what the heck it was. She looks up, and here's this thing hovering above her. And she said it looked like Jeepers Creepers, like that face. I don't know what that's more human than moth or owl. But anyway, it's weird. It scared her to death. She ran in the house, closed all the windows, closed the doors, and, she was terrified by the thing. And she said it just hovered there and then circled and flew away. How could something hover?
Do you happen to know if it was like any wind coming from this creature, like wings blowing air down at her, or there's some sort of draft, or was it kind of a spiritual thing? As
far as I can tell, she didn't feel anything. She just sensed this presence, which would... Now, everybody that's told me about their Mothman encounter, they never talk about it flapping wings until it takes off. They're just hovering there in the air. Husband and his wife out in the yard one evening. I guess it must have been closer to dark than not. He's on the phone talking to his mother about something, and she looks up in the air, and they see this thing hovering. It's kind of white and shimmery. She thought it was beautiful. He thought it was weird. He thought it was terrible, evil. He tells his mother, there's something over in the air over here. And then, of course, they didn't have a camera thing. He said it just flew away, flew down south through Crosbyton and on out of the end of town or something. I don't know what. But at that same time, this has been in the last 15, 20 years, as best I can figure. I've interviewed them twice, but they don't want to be on film. And I don't know why. Maybe, people think they're weird, but they've told the story the same every time. There was a guy south of town saw the same thing, flew right by his house, or he encountered it some way or another, but I don't know who that was. I think that house is gone. I think that guy is either deceased or gone, so I don't know who that was. But, if they wanted some sort of glory or something or attention, they would have said, oh, yeah, sure, record me, put it on YouTube. They didn't want to, they did not want that. So in a sense, that gives us some credibility, but the stories I've been told twice now, it's the same story each time, and I have no reason to doubt it. I can't explain it. And the other lady that was a friend of the first lady that lived on the highway over here, she told me about her friend, and then I interviewed her. So I've got the story from a secondary source and a first-hand source. She was going north out of Crosbyton on Route 651. It's a farm road. It's a paved road, but it's kind of a major thoroughfare for the farmers out here. As she hit the edge of town on the north side of Crosbyton, which is only a mile away, every way, there's a truck, 16-wheel truck coming towards her. And he's not going very fast, apparently. It's 4 o'clock in the morning, and all of a sudden, there's something in front of her. I don't know if she had time to even hit the brakes, but she, boom, hits this thing, bumps her head, dents the fender, knocks it sliding over in the grass in the ditch about, I think, 30 feet away from what she said. She gets out of the car, kind of stunned, I suppose, at first. The trucker gets out. He says, ma'am, get back in your car. Those things aren't human. Get back in your car. Said, I see him out here late at night. He was just kind of cussing and telling her, get back in your car. So she's one of those kind of not afraid of anything people, goes over and shakes this thing. She said, sir, are you all right?
Oh, my gosh.
He stands up, has his wings, gives her this weird look. It smells terrible, and just rises up and circles around her and flies away. And I don't know that the trucker, like, you see these things out here late at night in Crosbyton, and they were just now hearing about it. So here about 2 years ago now, at about Thanksgiving time, she told me that she was driving further on Route 651 out of Crosbyton about 6 or 8 miles out into the canyon. We have a canyon out there, Blanco Canyon, where I've collected all the three-toed horses, a giant camel, and stuff like that. But down at the bottom down there's a little creek runs through there. She wasn't going very fast. This thing's right in front of her again. Boom, she hits it with a car. I guess it flies over into the ditch. He gets out. He's standing up now. And she says, what are you? Who are you? What do you want? And he just rises up, circles around, and flies away.
Jeez. She hit it twice.
She hit it twice, yeah. She told another story, which I haven't published yet, but she and another lady, I think, had some sort of like a little, one of those little trailers that sell hot dogs and snow cones and things like that. And you open up the side of it, and you sell coffee or whatever.
Yeah, a food cart. Yeah.
Apparently they were staying in that thing. And this is not here, somewhere else in Texas. And she got to thinking, there was this guy came up. He looked like he's dressed in rags, like rags hanging off his arms. And they thought it was really weird. He didn't look right, wearing a hat or something's all worn out. And they closed the window. They were afraid of him. But when she described this, her first encounter with the Mothman, she described the wings as being like torn rags. Now, what the heck is that?
That's crazy, yeah. Birds
have feathers. Bats have a filament, have skin. But I don't know. It just doesn't fit. Doesn't fit a bird. Doesn't fit a pterodactyl. Doesn't fit a human. And I don't know anything that can hover but a hummingbird. They got to flap their wings 1,500 times a minute. So unless they're flapping the wings, and then my friend Max over here could tell you the story about the one at sundown. That thing could apparently fly 80 miles an hour. How fast does that pickup go?
As fast as they could go.
Was it probably a 60s pickup, 70s pickup?
1981 was when it happened.
Okay, 81.
At the tailgate.
So it had some kind of a 70s pickup probably. Well, if it's a Ford or a Chevy, that thing can run 110 miles an hour. So they were going at least 100 miles an hour.
I've heard stories of Bigfoot keeping up with truckers. They'll look out the window and they'll see it running right next to the window going down the freeway, 75, 80 miles an hour.
Wow.
And that's pretty fast, but I never heard anything going 100.
Well, and flying, and he's clawing at the back of the pickup.
No thanks.
Max, do you want to hear Max tell the story?
Yeah.
I can tell
bring him on here.
Let's hear it.
I'm working on something right here, and I'll tell that in a few minutes.
Okay, he'll be back in a few minutes.
This is like a real episode of Coast to Coast right here.
Oh, I love it, Joe. I think it's interesting, the idea that they didn't flap its wings, right? That's something actually that some of the experiences and encounters they had in West Virginia, they described a lot of the same things, like where these creatures would fly without flapping their wings, kind of hovered. It was just very strange. But that's a detail there, right? That we shouldn't overlook. I don't think you can, because it really matches with what people have as sort of historical precedents for this type of creature. And I think that the rags thing is interesting too. Like, to me, that sounds a lot like, in some ways, Nate, like when people describe the demonic, right? Which, it's like tattered rags or like a hefty garbage bag that's been torn and like torn up.
Yep.
And it kind of flutters. But the difference here to me is that she hit it, like physically hit this thing. So it wasn't like an apparition, or there was some physicality to this in the sense that it was involved in an impact with a vehicle.
That's what I've said. Okay, if it's a spirit or a demon, how can it leave a dent on a fender?
Yeah.
And be knocked over into the grass. Instead, you can see the slide marks where it slid through the grass, like weeds and grass.
Should have bagged him up and brought him back.
Yeah, she'd be a trillionaire now.
Yeah.
We need that in the museum, the Mothman exhibit.
Maybe I should do a sculpture thing based on what these ladies saw. If I had time, I could do it, but...
Well, I bet you if you did, and you just put a couple statues around, and you just have to get something people can take a photo of, and then you'll be...
Yeah, that's a good idea. Dean in Crosbyton.
Yep, exactly.
But, the first time I told this retired policeman and his wife, regular people, they're in their probably 60s, I guess, at that time. I mentioned this to them. They drove down here from Oklahoma so they could drive Route 651 in the middle of the night. See if they could see that thing. Now, if I had the coffee shop open, I'd have had a sale.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Well, you just need to go driving with the lady that saw it. She's two for.
Yeah,
at least 2 for 2 in hitting this thing. Maybe you need to just drive around with her a little bit and see if you can't come up on this guy.
$300 a trip. $300, ladies.
Mothman tours with Joe Taylor.
It sounds like these creatures there's sort of this spiritual side to them, but there's also this physicality to them. Most people who just don't know a lot just kind of throw generic terms at these things. But it sounds like these creatures are like a species of some kind. Is that how you see Mothman? Like you can't just say, well, I mean, it's probably demonic, but you can't just say, well, it's demons, because it sounds like it's a type of creature.
Here's what I've said to people. Okay, just a second. Could this be one of God's creation we just don't know anything about? Is it able to resist gravity somehow by some sort of a electric system? I mean, whales can generate sounds you can't hear. Elephants can generate sounds you can't hear. So is it possible that there's a creature out there that can hover? Maybe it's an actual moth. Maybe it's an actual owl. Maybe it's one of God's creatures. Maybe it's a demon, but why would it take on that vestige? Why would it take on that appearance and basically appear to be the same, do the same things to all these people? Why would they do that? Now, the one in West Virginia, didn't that have a red beam out of its eyes?
Well, it had red eyes, allegedly, which sounds to me, Joe, in some ways that the people describe the Bigfoot encounter too. Here's what gets me about this, and then when I start to noodle on this a little bit, it reminds me a bit of the Bigfoot phenomena, or even like some of what we see with like a Dogman, or even some of the Skinwalker experiences, that there's something humanoid to it, right? Or cryptid in that sense. When I think about it, I tend to kind of think of it in that sense, like it's some sort of hybridized thing. What's also weird, though, and I was going to ask you this as my next question, is that the West Virginia incidents have become so famous and really have just put that town on the map. I mean, they have a whole Mothman festival now. There's this mythology that goes along with Mothman that says that the sightings of him, or it, if we know we're not going to gender this thing, I guess. The sightings of this Mothman it precedes some sort of calamity or disaster, which it's like an omen almost. And I don't want to mix too much with, like, there's, of course there's the 75 book, The Mothman Prophecies, which became the movie and all that stuff. But before that, there was still this sort of ominous omen to a sighting. So I was going to say, I wanted to ask you, these ones here, down in your neck of the woods in Texas, did these things happen before bad stuff happened, according to the sightings? Because when we talk about bad stuff, and I mean, this is going to be on a macro level, right? Like, some of the ones that people claim are big events, right? Like, people claim they saw Mothman before 9/11. They claim they saw Mothman before the bridge collapse, the I-35 West bridge collapse. These things happen, and supposedly then it precedes something, calamitous. But is that part of the lore there, or are people just, kind of running them over with their with their drugs?
Of these several instances around here, I don't know of anything catastrophic that happened that, I think Max would say anything over there. So I don't know it, and it may not be the same creature. Maybe who knows? Maybe more than one type of them.
Yeah.
And by the way, you were talking about hybrids there. People who don't believe in the Bible or don't believe in the Book of Enoch, they're going to have a hard time defining a lot of things because some things are demonic. Some things, according to Enoch, are hybrids between animals, humans, and birds, or whatever. So is it conceivable, according to Enoch, it's possible this thing is a hybrid. So if it's part angelic, if you want to go there, then does that mean it can hover like an angel? Angels fly through the air, right? So could it be that? Well, a lot of people that don't believe in the Bible, they're going to have a hard time. They're going to, no, that couldn't be. Well, it's worth considering. And is there some sort of, I don't know, I know about the bridge collapsing. I didn't know about 9/11. Yeah. And nothing's happened around here that I know of at that time or didn't relate it to it. So I don't know the exact month and year when these things happened, except the one, I think, 2 years ago. 3 years ago by now, probably at Thanksgiving. You said the one was in 1980?
1981. I can tell that story anytime you'd like.
Yeah.
Let's get it.
We'll have Max tell that story of Sundown, Texas.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay, here he is. Max McNabb.
Max McNabb.
Welcome to Blurry Creatures.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
I'm Max McNabb. I'm the editor of TexasHillCountry.com, and I'm the author of a historical novel called Far Blue Mountains.
Well, good to have you.
Thank you. This story is about a Mothman, or really more of an Owlman sighting that happened in 1981 around Sundown, Texas. The witness, he's a friend of my father's. He's known my dad for 20 years. I don't want to reveal his real name, so let's call him Jay, but I personally interviewed him, and I can tell you that he's an honest man. I don't know exactly what he saw, but he wasn't lying. So anyway, it was 1981, and he was a high school freshman. Well, one night he went out hunting jackrabbits with 5 of his friends, and they were driving southwest of Sundown, Texas, around the oil lease known as the Central Mallet Unit. Then their pickup died. They didn't really know why, but a few minutes later, it just started up by itself again. So they were kind of young and they didn't really think much about it. So they just kept driving. They went out into a field and they started hunting rabbits. They walked over this hill and they looked down on a fence line about 60 yards away, and they saw something white sitting on the fence, perched on it. It looked like an owl, only 5 times as large as any owl should have been. And Jay said they shone spotlights on it, and it turned its head and looked directly at him. It had red eyes, a red chest, and a beak. And it spread its huge wings 12 feet across and started flying toward them. So they freak out and they start running back toward the pickup, and they pile in and they speed off. Well, they had rifles. They were out hunting jackrabbits, so they tried to shoot at the creature, whatever it was. And Jay saw one of his friends raise his rifle and pull the trigger, but nothing happened. And, he had the impression at the time that something had gone wrong with the rifle. He doesn't really know why, but something weird was going on with the pickup and their rifles, apparently. So they're hauling down the road, and the thing is flying after them, and it was clawing at their tailgate. They could hear it scratching at the tailgate of the pickup. So they swing out onto the highway. It's still following them. They're headed towards Sundown, and when they get right into town, they swing past the Sundown cop who's parked on the side of the road watching for people who were speeding. Well, they speed past him, and he starts to go after him, but then he stops and turns aside, because apparently he saw this thing chasing him too. So they make their escape, and Jay, he said he was so traumatized or so sick from this incident that he couldn't go to school for 2 days. It freaked him out so badly. The really interesting thing, though, is that there's a creature in Apache mythology that closely resembles what Jay saw that night. The Apaches call it Owlman Giant, and I can give you a little background on that if you'd like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, I know a little bit about Apache mythology because I published this historical novel, Far Blue Mountains, and it's about the last free Apaches that were living in Mexico up until the 1920s. These were the Apaches that didn't surrender with Geronimo. They stayed up in the Sierra Madre, and they kept their old ways. They actually kidnapped a rancher's son in 1926, and it caused a huge uproar along the border, and that's what my novel's about. But I had to research a lot of Apache mythology and their religion to, portray them accurately. And one of the stories they tell is of a creature called Owlman Giant. He's associated with the kind of Apache messianic figure known as Child of the Waters. The story starts when a spirit called Life Giver came to an Apache girl called White Painted Woman. And this spirit told her that she was going to give birth to a boy called Child of the Waters and that she had to protect him from a monster called Owlman Giant. In those days, this Owlman Giant would steal the meat of any deer the Apaches brought down on a hunt. So White Painted Woman protected her child, and then finally one day he told her that it was time for him to go out and slay these monsters, these 4 mythological creatures that had been persecuting the people. So he joined the hunter called Killer of Enemies, and they went out and brought down a deer. And as soon as they did, Owlman Giant appeared and demanded the meat. Instead of giving it to him, Child of the Waters challenged the creature to a duel. 4 is the sacred number of the Apaches, and they agreed that Child of the Waters and Owlman Giant would both shoot 4 arrows, and that Owlman Giant would shoot his first. As soon as Owlman Giant was ready to shoot his first arrow, lightning flashed, and a blue rock appeared at the feet of Child of the Waters. The rock told him to pick it up, and he did. And then Owlman fired his 4 huge arrows, and each one missed the boy. Then it was Child of the Waters' turn. His first 3 arrows destroyed Owlman's protective armor, and then the 4th arrow pierced his heart. And that's how Child of the Waters killed the first of 4 mythological monsters that had been persecuting the people. And, you know, the creature described in that Apache mythology sounds remarkably like what my dad's friend saw that night in 1981 near Sundown, Texas.
Mm. That's wild.
Yeah.
That is wild.
I haven't even heard all those stories.
Yeah, it's got some David and Goliath vibes too, a little bit. There's some like interesting sort of Nephilim sort of like threads there. I feel like you can pull as well with the idea that you know, we talk about the Gen 6 event. You can find phenomena like this across the planet, and then you're talking about hybrids, and we're talking about, you know, Joe's telling stories about people seeing these things today, and then you have something very similar that happened there, you know, in the early 80s, which we love because we're an 80s themed show, Nate. But you have something very similar that's happening in the 80s, but you can go all the way back to Apache lore about this same sort of hybrid, which I think is super cool.
So you know what this reminds me of? There's these famous petroglyphs in caves. I think there's one in Australia. Like, I think it's called the Wandagina overhang. And they have these, like, they look like owls or grays, but a lot of people send those pictures. Have you guys seen those yet? They look exactly like what you're describing.
Have you seen that stuff, Max?
I don't think I've seen those.
I've seen some stuff sort of like that. That's just around the head. You think people are going to think that's a space helmet or something like that, maybe.
Some people say, oh, they're just drawing owls, but other people argue that they're not owls. They're something else.
Well, you know, if you look in Egyptian sculpture, there's something in there that they depict. It looks like an owl head. And, you know, they've got all kinds of heads on different human bodies over there. But the more I looked at that, the more I said that looks like what these ladies described. It's clearly not a human, but apparently it's on a human form. So I don't know, how far back does this thing go? I didn't know that about the Apache legend.
Alien abductees often claim they see an owl right before an abduction experience. Like, you know, the night before they have an alien abduction experience, they'll see an owl outside. It seems to be like some sort of totem animal.
Wow. Why an owl? You know, well, aren't owls associated with
the occult?
Moloch, right?
Yeah. What's her name? That's supposed to have been Adam's other wife.
Lilith.
Huh?
Lilith.
Yeah, Lilith. You know, the depictions of Lilith, she's a woman, but she's got wings and bird feet. There's still little owls standing there on each side of her. This goes back, what? That's
thousands of years.
Yeah, several thousand years.
And you got Bohemian Grove.
That's what I was
Bohemian
thinking
Grove?
of. Yeah, like the Bohemian Grove, the giant owl statue that they do the mock sacrifice, you know, human sacrifice.
Well, I hadn't made the connection. Have y'all had people tell about that, or
no? We're just putting. Hey, we're connecting dots right now on the fly, Joe. This is
eventually, but when they try to cancel us and we go dark, you know,
yeah, we'll sneak in like Alex Jones. Yeah.
Alex Jones.
Well, I mean, we talk more about the creatures, but we get a lot of material sent to us to say, look, they were drawing aliens back in the day. They were seeing these alien creatures, but they look like, a lot of people, the skeptics say, well, they look like owls. And then, like you were saying, a lot of the abduction episodes, they say that like these little owl creatures came to visit them. And I wonder if that's just memories some sort of screen memories, but they're actually seeing maybe the grays. Maybe it's all connected somehow. But yeah, the Mothman is weird because it's one of the only cryptids that's mentioned that flies. All the other cryptids don't fly. Dogman, Bigfoot, Chupacabra, all these other cryptids, they don't fly. But this Mothman,
yeah.
Maybe the Jersey Devil is the only other thing, but the Jersey Devil could just be a Mothman, really. Could all be the same thing.
A skinny skeletal Mothman. That thing is weird. The pictures of that thing look weird.
Yeah, he's not eating a lot in Jersey.
Yeah. They closed that McDonald's down ever since then.
They shut her down.
It's like a chupacabra that doesn't get fed. You know, he looks bad.
Like a mangy dog, yeah.
I think it's crazy, though. The red eyes and a lot of the bioluminescent, is another thread with the cryptids. We were just doing an interview with a guy this week that thinks that the ancient giants had bioluminescent eyes and they had this ability to see in the dark, and Bigfoot can see in the dark, and Mothman maybe could see in the dark. And there's this sort of, they all have these glowing red eyes or something. Like there's some connection to all these things where they're weird, but they seem like they're in a category of their own. I don't think they're just like an undiscovered species personally. I think there's something else going on. I think there's some hybridization going on where they weren't supposed to be here. That's what I think.
Well, Max mentioned, I didn't remember that, or if I'd even heard it, that this thing's chest glowed red. Sort of. There's a depiction. Is that in the Lubbock paper, that drawing? They showed it having red eyes and a red chest. Pterodactyls, apparently, living pterodactyls, apparently have a bioluminescent chest. They can appear to be like a blue or green light. They can come off and on, and that sounds fantastic until you think of the firefly. And those weird fish down at the bottom of the ocean have a little thing out front of them that glows. They get people to eat it, get fish to eat it. Yeah. So that is not fantastic. That's the reality in certain animals. So,
sure,
but a glowing chest.
Sounds like E.T.
Yeah, E.T. What is E.T.? He was a hairless Mothman that lost his wings because he was bad.
Instead of his chest, his finger glowed. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
It's like one of those hairless chihuahuas from another planet.
Like one of them weird cats without hair.
Let's get weird here, Joe. What if the Watchers took something like a firefly and put it together with some other flying creature and created this thing? All flesh was corrupted. If everything was corrupted, then could there have been hybrid insects?
Well, you gotta ask the question. According to Jasher, they were forcing cohabitation between different species of animals, which may have given us the Griffith, or it just may be one of God's creation we don't know anything about. And if pterodactyls' chests can glow, and you can mate them with an owl or a big bird, there's some birds out there as big as elephants, in the past. So I don't know. It's so creepy. Most people won't even talk about it. But there's this report. There's at least a second report I've heard of, or third, where these things have glowing eyes or glowing chests. So again, there's no reason for people to make that stuff up. Certainly back then, and with no provocation. So I think that gives it credibility when there's no reason to tell a lie. Every reason not to. Most people don't do that. They just don't tell lies. They tell little lies, but they're not going to make up something that they don't need to make up. If they got to cover the fact they went to the bar trying to keep their wife from knowing, that's one kind of lie. But to come in and tell her that they saw this creature flying around that didn't have to flap his wings, they don't do that. So to me, the absence of any kind of benefit gives it credibility.
Yeah. I think all the smell, the sulfur smell, the weird clothes, the sort of, technology breaking. I mean, these are other themes that go along with other cryptids. So you hear a lot of that stuff with Bigfoot encounters. The camera breaks, or the trail cam shuts off, or the camera we had didn't work and it smelled like sulfur burning. It smelled like it came out of underground, or it smelled terrible. It's weird that all these cryptid encounters have similar themes. And it just makes you wonder, like, where are they seem to be coming from somewhere, and they're related somehow. And I've heard those stories about the pterodactyls, by the way. I've heard that there's places in the world where they kind of hunt at night, and they come out at night, and so the locals don't go out at night because they can see them flying through the skies at night, and they make a terrible sound. I can't remember. I watched a documentary about this a long time ago, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. but the locals would go inside because these things would come out and they look like streaks of light through the sky and they would say that they were pterodactyls still hunting.
Well, there's a researcher named Dave Wetzel and Carl Ball down at the Creation Evidence Controversial Museum down there. They went to Papua New Guinea in the last 20 years, I guess, and I think they saw these creatures flying at night with something glowing on them. They never did get a close encounter, but they found the tracks of one where it had stood in the mud with its back legs, and then the front arms have fingers on them. They could see where they were sitting there on all fours. There's this lady that back in, when would that have been? Not 2004, was telling me that this big bird thing, she called it a bird, tried to swoop down and catch her friend's little sisters, who were 12 and 7, and being little Mexican girls down in Mexico, they probably weren't very tall, weren't very big. So that's plausible that an animal with a 10 or 12 foot wingspan could pick up a little child 6, 7 years old. And, again, that was in the evening, right as the sun was going down. Same thing happened over in Papua New Guinea where this pterodactyl tried to snatch the man's 5-year-old child from a boat at I guess about sundown. And he was able to grab him away and then died 3 days later of burns from this thing either spitting on him or something else. Mm. And again, you go, well, why don't we have pictures of it? Well, those people over there don't have electricity and the cameras wouldn't work anyway because there's a lot of humidity and all sorts of stuff. So no, they don't have cell phones and all that stuff, or you probably would have some video. But Ron Moorhead, when he started getting into Bigfoot up in the Sierra Madres, he said that, they could tell when they turned the recorder on. Either they saw the light or reflection of the light, or they could hear it whirring, or they could detect the electrical current. I don't know, but he said they just hush. So there's something to that we don't understand, but.
Yeah, it's crazy, Nate. It sounds a lot like Joe, like when people, go to record or they go after Bigfoot and and the batteries don't stop working, that they've just charged in their, in their cameras, or the trail cams, cut out and don't work, or all these technological malfunctions around some of the phenomena is pretty fascinating. Mm-hmm. Even just on what is it, Skinwalker Ranch? It's in its 3rd season. Anytime they have these weird phenomena, all the electronics fail. It's just weird. I don't know how to explain it except that I don't know if it's frequencies or electromagnetism or perhaps some of these creatures can operate in quantums where they are able to move through dimensions. You can call it what you want, whether you want to call it the spiritual realm or another dimension, but the fact that some of these things seem to be able to pass in and out. I even think about the story about them raising the rifle and it malfunctioning. We have stories, Nate, about people trying to shoot Bigfoot and Bigfoot disappearing, or them getting shots off and then he's gone in front of their eyes. There's not it's just like he just disappears.
Yeah, Luke, and the weirdest thing is a lot of that stuff happens in Texas for whatever reason. Down in Texas, you guys got a hot spot down there.
I'll tell you what, and I think if we put the word around, there's bound to be other people who've seen these things that didn't talk about it or told their wife, and that's the end of the story. But I plan to pursue this stuff. But man, I'm so busy right now putting the museum back together after the storm last year and trying to get it open again and putting together a trip over to Israel in October sometime with some wild stuff over there. So I kind of got my hands full.
Yeah, I remember we were talking last time. You were teasing about some stuff you were finding in Montana.
Up there in those canyons in Glendive, Montana, one of my friends that I worked with up there to develop a site for it's called the Glendive Dinosaur and Fossil Museum. They had a pretty big deal going now, but there's stuff happens out there. There's a story of a guy that disappeared. There was a lot of criminal activity up there in the old days. Horse stealing. We went to this one place where there was like a box canyon about that as big, we must have been 75 or 100 feet across, and they'd taken all the stuff from the railroad, maybe stolen it, and built a really strong gate. So they'd run all these wild horses in there and close the gate. And they were telling this one story. This is back in the 20s and 30s, I think. This one horse, and I saw the wall. This thing climbed. He climbed a rock wall that was almost straight up. It was almost like a squirrel climbing, but he managed to climb up over this cliff, which was dang near impossible, and got out. So that's kind of wild horses they were dealing with. But I guess they finally got caught. They were stealing cattle, and it's the old West Rustler days up there. But there's a lot of weird stuff goes on up there. And those guys, I mean, nobody's talking to them. You know, they're too busy trying to survive the winters in North Dakota and Montana. And when I was there, I didn't know where to ask about Bigfoot, if they had any encounters. And, you know, those little cowboys up there, they're pretty quiet. They don't tell stuff. You just don't know.
Yeah.
A lot of dead dinosaurs. I can guarantee that.
Yeah, at some point we got to do a full episode on that.
Your kids are going to flip out, man.
So you got to get that Mothman statue going. Get it near the museum.
Yeah.
And you'll sell a lot of donuts, Joe.
We'll have to come up with Mothman candy. Mom, I got to have like a Mothman chocolate bar.
That's right.
They're $20. Mom, I don't care.
This Russian guy made them, and they're real good.
Made by Russian, you know they're good.
You could do something cool like that guy in Texas with all the Cadillacs buried on his farm, sticking out, the guy that painted the mountain, like Love Mountain or whatever he calls it, and he's got all the Bible verses on the mountain with all the paint. You know what I'm talking about, Luke?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, yeah.
Just need like a bunch of Mothman sticking out of the ground or something, and people will come. They will.
People like to stand in front of even a bad statue of a bad carving of Bigfoot. They like to stand in front of it and get their picture taken.
Oh, yeah.
Well, while they're there, they might just come in and buy you a cup of coffee.
Exactly.
That's a good idea.
I know. I love it.
Well, Joe, when are you guys going to be, you'd said earlier, when are you guys going to be back open?
We're open now technically, but we'll have a grand reopening on Labor Day, which is September 5th. It'll be all week. We'll have some people in. Max is going to be there to talk to anybody interested in writing. And he knows a lot of weird, cool stuff. But he is a writer. He's a fabulous writer. He's an editor of the Online Hill Country News magazine, which is no small thing at his young age, you know, to do all that stuff. He talk about anything, but he's a farm boy. You know, we grew up on the same farms out here. But, you know, that doesn't keep you from having an inquiring mind and reading. You know, if you just read and think. But Max has got what were we talking about the other night with Plato, the Platonic
ideas?
Yeah. I mean, how many farm boys can you talk to Plato about?
That's right.
Yeah.
So we get together over in Rawls and eat and drink coffee together every now and then and just kind of get up to speed on whatever's going on. But no subject is good.
Was Plato writing about Atlantis?
Yeah, that's where the first stories of Atlantis come from, is what Plato heard.
Right. Yeah, and most people don't know that.
And that's Blurry. We love talking.
Oh yeah, boy, you get into some stuff there.
I mean, that's basically where our show goes. I mean, we talk about creatures, but we get into alternate history and the history that the mainstream doesn't want to talk about a lot on this show. And so it's kind of interesting that, you know, in order to understand these cryptid creatures, you got to understand history, and you got to go all the way back to Mount Hermon and get into the weird stuff that happened. And I wonder how some of these creatures survived. We hear a lot of stories, Joe. They come through portals. People can open it up, and it seems like these cryptid creatures have some connection with energy, whether it's the energy of a tape recorder or a camera, or it's like opening some kind of cosmic doorway, or they can hover over your head. Even I don't know. It's like they can tap into some energy that we don't understand.
You know, there's certain electrical equipment, you know, things that have electricity in them. There's nothing, you can't get shocked, but there's a vibration to them or a sensation to them that you don't like. You don't want to, you know, it's not comfortable. There's a lot we don't know. In fact, I've been looking into ley lines and meridians and all that stuff. The 33rd parallel kind of goes south of here through Lubbock, almost through Crosbyton, and it just makes you wonder, well, you know, is there an energy field down there? You're touching a electrical appliance or something. You're not getting shocked, but you're getting some sort of sensation that's kind of strange. Is there something in the earth? Is there a magnetic field down there that occurs ever so often on the globe, or even a flat earth? I guess would have to say that they believe in meridians and ley lines. So there's a lot we don't know yet that might explain some of this stuff. But the Nephilim thing, if you don't get into that, Christians that don't want to talk about the Nephilim want to believe that those were just the sons of Seth. You know, there's so much they're not going to be able to use. No answer to a lot of these things. When you figure in that there were powerful angels that did fall and came down and married women, if you believe that, now Atlantis isn't so far-fetched. You know, was he one of the major powerful angels up there? Did he leave, what planet did he leave? You know, and he came down here and built all this stuff allegedly, according to Plato and others. Josephus, didn't Josephus talk about those guys?
Yeah.
They're a hybrid. If that's true, if angels can marry a woman, that would be a hybrid. Yeah. And that might explain a lot of these semi-animals that can fly, but without moving their wings. You know, does an angel have to flap his wings like a bird? You know, a lot of questions there. But anyhow, if you don't investigate it, you won't find out anything.
You got to ask the questions, Joe. That's what we're doing here. We're just asking the questions. It's funny because you talk about technology, right? You know how you get them? You hit them with a Buick. No technology, no electronics in that thing. Just steal in American muscle. You could take down a Mothman twice.
That's right. Yeah, it wouldn't be a dented printer. It'd be a dented Mothman who really needs medical help. She was thinking about calling the doctor. In fact, she took the local doctor. Her story was so convincing and passionate. She took the local medical doctor up there to show him where this happened. Now, he could see the streaks in the grass. And I guess she was looking for blood or something, but, you know, there's nothing there. But that's how convinced she was that she had hit some body.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's got to be a traumatic experience. It reminds me of when hunters don't want to shoot Bigfoot because it's too human. And they can't, you know, if you hit something with your car, you feel like you probably have that guilt, like you feel like you did something wrong. It's not like hitting deer where it's like it's unfortunate, but, you know, you kind of part of life, you hit animal, but this feels like something else. And to go back to what you were saying, Luke, I know you were just making a joke, but something I've said on the show many times is that original Bigfoot footage, it's a film camera. It's not modern technology. It's an old film camera. And then that's supposedly the best footage we have of this creature. And I just wonder if there's something there. Like, you know, old school film doesn't have that, you know.
Electromagnetic. There's no electromagnetic frequency.
Yeah.
There's no EMF. Yeah. There's something about the frequencies. No, yeah. You talked about ley lines and there's something about the frequencies.
Pyramids are on the 33rd, right?
Yeah, apparently so. And so is Roswell. So is something in Peru.
Texas.
What's that?
Aurora, Texas.
Aurora, Texas. Oh, really? I didn't know that.
I believe so.
You know about the Aurora crash in Texas?
No.
You don't? No. There's a place north of Azle, Texas, 30 miles, 20 miles, not far from Fort Worth, a little town. I think Max knows the story far better than I do, but these ships had been seen, these flying ships. They were kind of like 100 or so feet up in the air, flying along, and they would descend out of ladders. Somebody would descend down a ladder and go back up. And apparently then, there were several of them seen here in Texas. There was a pattern they were seeing from Oregon?
From California all the way out to Texas back in 1897. They called it the Great Airship Sightings.
Yeah, the Great Airship Sightings. So finally over there at is that little town Aurora?
Aurora, yeah.
Okay. This thing crashes into a windmill on this doctor's ranch out just outside of town, right? He goes out there and the thing's on fire. It's this strange ship, and the guy that was piloting it is laying on the ground and he's apparently dead. So the doctor said that he was not of this world. Well, they buried him there in the Aurora cemetery, and his headstone's been stolen so many times. They just put a big rock out there, a big yellow rock where he's buried. And just a medical doctor, right? He's seen 1,000 people with no clothes on. He's seen babies, kids, old people, women, men, and he didn't think it looked like a normal human being. So was he just mistaken? Was the thing badly burned? Was it really just somebody had invented a new airship that was fueled by helium, or lifted by helium and had a small propeller that moved it? Is that what they said? Some kind of little engine that ran the propeller and moved it?
Some kind of mysterious engine. It was part of something called the Sonora Aero Club, basically a secret society of early aviators. And they had some sort of mysterious engine that was powering these airships. No one's exactly sure what it was, but there's some drawings of the engine, and it looks remarkably like the bell that the Nazis were experimenting with in Germany.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah, right here in Texas.
Wow.
There's another story too, that this thing was down in Merkel, Texas, wasn't it?
Sounds right.
Judd Burton's mother was a girl, teenage girl, had left church one evening and said, "Here's this 2 or 3 boys and girls, and they're going along, and here comes this weird ship thing, and it's dragging a hose, a hook, a rope, or something. It gets stuck on the railroad tracks, so it hovers there. This guy comes down the rope or down a ladder, gets it undone, and these kids start throwing rocks at him. Gets back in the airship and goes on."
Weird. Weird.
Yeah. Why throw rocks at it? Idiots. Anyway, that was this lady's son is one of our constituents. He's a, Giants guy. We've been to Peru and stuff together. I know his mother. His mother never would make up a lie like that. She told exactly what happened, and that's what happened. Now, what was it? Nobody knows.
Like the fabric of reality is so much stranger than people really want to admit, and everything from UFOs to Mothman to Bigfoot, it's all related because, we've heard stories of the same thing, but instead of this dude coming out down a ladder, it's Bigfoot coming out of these things. And the more stories you hear, the weirder it gets.
Yeah, and what's any of that about? It's like why? If these are demons, why depict themselves as a Bigfoot that's going to get shot at? Where's the value in that if it's a spiritual thing? What's the value in some Mothman standing in front of a lady and that hits him with a car? What's the point of that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It feels like there's some sort of hybrid, and they're not really sure where they are or what they're doing. And then there's other entities that sound like they know exactly what they're doing. And there's a lot of weird stuff in between. But what are you gonna say?
Why do people do things? Back there in the early 70s, y'all remember the streakers, the guys that take the clothes off and run through the streets, nothing on?
Oh yeah.
I was driving down through Beverly Hills one day, or that area, standing over at the crosswalk was this beautiful young girl with not a thing on but her mind. Nothing. What in the world would she be doing out in the middle of the road, walking across the street with nothing on? Some people want to exhibit themselves. They want to just do something like that. They want to, whatever, that nothing comes of it. They don't do anything. They don't touch you. Nobody touches them. So are these Mothman encounters? Is that what they are? These guys over sundown, I don't know, this thing's chasing them, clawing on the back of the pickup at 90 or 100 miles an hour. Didn't hurt them, didn't touch them, did it? But, was that it, just to scare them? It's like Quanah Parker, the great Indian chief. He took pleasure in scaring people. They thought he was going to do something he didn't. So, there's that aspect. Maybe these things just are out having fun. It's weird. I don't know. Did they drink Dr. Pepper? That's the real question.
Hey. So don't kick them out. Not allowed in Texas.
Well, it's like old Andy Warhol. If you know art, I don't know if that guy could paint or not. All he did was silkscreen photographs and print them in weird colors. Anybody can do that. So, he was in a lot of bad stuff, weird stuff, but he drank Dr. Pepper, so he could be totally bad.
That's funny.
That white hair is scary.
It just gets weirder, everything from crop circles to Mothman sightings. There's just a lot of things that we don't know. And I don't know if that's the way that God wanted it to be, but it seems like for a lot of Christians in particular, that's hard for them. They think the world operates and behaves exactly like they think it does. There's just nothing strange. Everything in the movies is in the movies. But everything in the movies sounds like it got it from some real exact, like a real event. It's like the movies aren't actually that original at all. They're just pulling from history and stories, Well,
I've said that before. I was in Hollywood, starting in 1969. And by about 1971, I began to realize there's another message in all these movies. And it wasn't the story they were trying to get you to believe. But there's something else going on there. And the average person, they want to be socially correct. And they may go to church. They may know people just, would run that down. But as long as they're around their little circle, they feel comfortable. but they by and large want to be acceptable socially. So unless Mothman or Bigfoot is a real socially acceptable thing, they're going to shy away from it like anything else. So you're not going to get much help from regular people on any of this stuff. They don't even want to consider it until maybe it happens to them, and then they'll talk about it. But I don't know. Why do some people see Bigfoot and everybody else doesn't? You know how it used to be when we had landlines? Some mother would go to pick up the phone, and her son would be on the other line without ringing. You know, he picks up the phone to call his mother. Before they can dial, before she can answer, she picks up the phone at the same time. You've heard those old stories?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? How could that be? How could twins, separated birth, have very similar experiences in totally different environments? There's something there that we don't understand, and it's invisible.
Yeah. And that's kind of why we started the show, just to get more answers. But you get more answers, but you get more questions. So I don't know if it ever ends, but it gives people a lot more faith to believe the weirder stuff, especially in their Bible. You know, the stories that, you know, modern day preachers and pastors and Christians just kind of brush aside are the most important pivotal parts, like you were saying earlier in the episode, that you can understand these monumental events. You can understand things like Atlantis. You can understand things like the Egyptian societies and crossing the Red Sea, and stories that you just didn't think were actually real until you have some sort of weird experience. So that's why we do what we do. That's why we like Blurry Creatures is continuing on, because it just gets weirder. We hear more about, you know, creatures every day, and we appreciate you coming on, Joe and Max, and talking about these Mothman sightings of Texas. We just had to learn more about it. So thank you guys for telling us those stories. It's fascinating.
And Joe, it only took 100 episodes for you to come back. We had you on episode 16, and here we are. We're past that. We're past 100. We're nearing 118, 19, 120 by the time this drops.
Wow.
So we're happy to have you back. It was a long lap for you, big long victory lap, but we got you back. So thanks for coming back on the show, Joe.
Glad to be here. It's fun. You're doing some really interesting stuff. I'm glad Max was able to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have Max as well.
He's an unfound treasure yet.
Yeah, Max, if you ever want to come on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we'll have to maybe do another show if you want to come on and tell some more blurry stories. We like it. We love hearing all the ancient history, and especially in America here, because as we've uncovered on our show, there's a whole history in America that nobody wants to talk about. Everything from the mounds to, you know, places they won't let people go to, and there's just so much history here that we don't have any idea. So it's always good to learn more about it. So if you ever want to talk about that, you're welcome.
I'd love to. Maybe sometime I can come back and tell you the most famous ghost story in Texas history. I think your listeners would probably like that.
That'd be awesome.
We're in.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, guys. Appreciate it. And,
but when we hang up, I will text you Max's contact if you like.
Okay, perfect.
Sounds great.
Thank
you, Joe.
Yeah, and Joe, tell people in Texas where they can come or close by, hang out with you and see your museum and get some coffee and pastries.
Well, if you know where Buddy Holly came from in Lubbock, Texas, we're about 32 miles east of Lubbock, Buddy Hollyville. We're right on the main highway. 82 is actually a main street right through Crosbyton. We're on the north side of the downtown square. We take up most of the square. It's the Mount Blanco Fossil Museum, and we're at 124 West Main Street, Crosbyton, Texas, 79322. And you go to our website, www.mountblanco.com, and we'll be posting some things on there as we get up to speed. So, yeah, come by. We got new displays, stuff that will blow your mind, and we haven't even talked about any of that stuff, but yeah, y'all come by, have some coffee, have a Russian pastry, and it'll be good.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. And you can see his freshly new, in the works, Mothman statue. It's coming. It's coming. And Joe, just so you know, you're internet famous. If anyone gets into the Nephilim space and they Google giants, they see a picture of you with that femur. I think it's at your shop, right?
It's in the that's in the museum. That's one of the major displays. And
yeah,
we get more interest in that than just about anything. People love people, big people, little people, weird people. You know, people love people, and they love the giant thing because they know. I think a lot of them that there's something in the Bible, and sure enough, maybe it's true. That's people like that. Yeah, it's really a I guess that's why I'm famous for that. And my font called Blip Old Black. It's on all your computers, folks, called Bauhaus, designed in 1970. So, yep.
Yeah, I love it. All our listeners in Texas, go check out Joe's museum. Thanks, guys, for coming on again and telling your stories, and appreciate you doing it last minute, too. That was cool of you to do that, so thank you, Joe.
You're welcome. Good talking to you. We'll talk to you later.
All right,
Joe.
All right, guys.
Okay. You bet. Bye-bye.
Bye.